The attic smelled of time and forgotten things. When Jonas brushed aside an old quilt and saw a small box marked for her, his heart stopped, because there hadn't been a her in his life for years. The attic smelled of time and forgotten things, that peculiar mix of cedarwood, mothballs, and ghosts. Jonas hadn't stepped into his parents' house in almost 8 years, and now, standing beneath the cracked ceiling beams, it felt smaller, quieter, as if even the walls had learned to keep secrets. He dragged an old sheet off a pile of boxes, sending a storm of dust spinning into the sunlight. Each particle seemed to shimmer with memory. Somewhere beneath it all, the house creaked like an old chest trying to breathe again. The realtor had told him to clear everything out before the sale next week. Do it fast, Mr. Vale. Buyers like space, not stories. But this house was a story, one he'd stopped reading long ago. Hey there, my dear family and friends. If you're already tuned in and ready to enjoy this story, hit that subscribe button, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, because tomorrow I'll be bringing you another story just as captivating, and you definitely don't want to miss it. Now back to the story. Jonas set down the box cutter and rubbed the back of his neck. All right, let's get this over with, he muttered. His own voice sounded foreign here, bouncing off the wooden rafters. He opened the first box. Photo albums. The kind with yellowed corners and captions written in his mother's looping hand. A boy with a missing tooth. A girl beside him, hair tangled, eyes bright. Layla. Always laughing, always reaching for the camera. Jonas shut the album quickly. Not today. But the attic had other plans. Downstairs, through the thin floorboards, he heard the faint tick of the grandfather clock. The same one that used to lull him to sleep, and that same steady tick seemed to mock him now, counting every moment he'd lost to pride. He exhaled long and slow, then climbed deeper into the attic's shadows. The light bulb flickered above him, painting everything in soft amber. There were trunks marked winter clothes, Dad's tools, holiday decor. He moved each aside until his knees ached. Then, behind an old mirror wrapped in cloth, he saw it, a small wooden box almost hidden from view. It wasn't dusty like the others. It had been wiped clean, carefully placed. And on its lid, in his mother's handwriting, 3 simple words. For her. Jonas froze. He whispered the words aloud, as though tasting them might make them less strange. For her. For who? His mother had been gone for nearly 6 years. His father 2 years before that. Lila hadn't spoken to him since the funeral. Not after the argument, not after what he said. Could it be for Lila? The handwriting looked recent. Or maybe he was just seeing what he wanted to see. He reached out, fingertips trembling as they brushed the lid. It felt warmer than it should. Or maybe it was his pulse hammering through his skin. He lifted it slightly, but a wave of unease hit him, and he let it drop back down. Not yet. Not without knowing what memories were waiting inside. Jonas sat on an old chest, staring at the box. The attic hummed softly, wood shifting, pipes sighing, the wind testing the eaves. It was strange how alive a silent room could feel when you were alone with your thoughts. He thought of his mother's last day. How she tried to speak between shallow breaths, her frail hand brushing his cheek. He'd told her to rest, to save her strength. She had wanted to tell him something important, but the moment slipped away with her final breath. He had convinced himself it didn't matter, that some things were better left unsaid. Now, sitting in the attic, the weight of that choice pressed harder than the dust in his lungs. Down the street, a car door slammed. Jonas looked out the small attic window. The old maple tree still stood guard, its leaves red and gold. A woman walked past, her figure familiar, shoulders squared, hair darker now but the gait the same. Layla. He hadn't seen her since the funeral. Not properly. Just a glimpse at the graveside as she turned away from him. Jonas swallowed hard. What would she think if she saw him now, sifting through their parents' memories like a thief? The attic light flickered again. He rose and turned the box in his hands, reading the label once more. For her. Could it really be meant for his sister? Or someone else entirely? Someone he never knew about? His chest tightened. He wanted to open it, but a voice deep inside whispered, "Not yet. Once you open it, everything changes." He descended the attic ladder slowly, carrying the box in both hands as though it might break. The hallway below was dim, lined with framed photos, milestones frozen in time. His parents on their wedding day. His mother holding 2 toddlers by a lake. A family that looked happy, unaware of how silence could destroy love. He stopped in front of the last photo, the 4 of them, Christmas 1999. He was 10, Lila 8. She had her arm around him, smiling wider than he ever did. He looked down at the box again. Maybe this was meant for her. Maybe their mother had known they'd need each other again someday. He set it on the dining table and poured himself a glass of water from the old pitcher. The taste was metallic, faintly bitter, like time. He glanced at the clock. 4:23 p.m. He still had hours of sorting left, yet the urge to leave burned in him. To drive away. To forget he ever saw the box. Instead he sat and stared. He didn't hear the doorbell until the second chime. Jonas blinked, startled. No one ever came here. He hesitated, then opened the door. Standing there, wrapped in a faded scarf, was Lila. Her eyes met his, cautious, uncertain but not cold. "Hey," she said softly. "The realtor told me you were here." Jonas nodded, words stuck in his throat. For a moment neither spoke. The air between them thickened with everything they hadn't said for years. Finally, Lila's gaze drifted past him into the house. "You found something, didn't you?" He blinked. "What makes you say that?" Her lips curved into something between a smile and a sigh. "You always get that look. Like you're trying to solve a puzzle only you can see." Jonas hesitated. "There's a box. For me?" she asked. He didn't answer. Lila stepped inside, brushing dust from the doorframe. "Then let's see it." Jonas's pulse quickened. He turned back toward the table, toward the box marked for her. The air in the house seemed to hold its breath. If you were Jonas, standing there face to face with someone you hurt, holding a mysterious box that might reopen old wounds, would you open it in front of them or keep it hidden? Tell me in the comments. Lila stood just inside the doorway, arms crossed, eyes darting around the room as if searching for ghosts she already knew were there. The afternoon light poured through the curtains, soft but revealing. Dust swirled between them like tiny memories refusing to settle. The box sat on the dining table. Small, plain, unassuming. Yet it carried the weight of years neither could measure. Jonas broke the silence first. "I wasn't expecting you." "I know," she said. Her voice was calm, but her hands fidgeted in her coat pockets. "I just thought I should see the house before it's gone." He nodded slowly, unsure how to begin, unsure what she wanted from him, or what he wanted from her. For a while they just stood there, 2 strangers who shared the same blood and the same silence. Finally, Lila's gaze fell to the table. "What's that?" Jonas followed her eyes. "I found it in the attic." She stepped closer, brow furrowing as she read the faded writing on the lid. Her breath caught. "That's Mom's handwriting." Jonas's throat tightened. "Yeah, I thought so too." Lila reached out, fingertips hovering above the word "her," as if touching it might burn. "You think it's for me?" "I don't know." "Well, who else would it be for?" Jonas exhaled sharply, rubbing the back of his neck. "I was hoping you could tell me." Her eyes flicked up to his. "You didn't open it." He shook his head. "Didn't feel right. Not until I knew." The air between them pulsed with something fragile. Part respect, part fear. Lila hesitated, then stepped back. "Maybe we shouldn't. Maybe it's personal." Jonas frowned. "It's been sitting up there for years. If Mom wanted you to have it, you should know what's inside." "But what if she didn't mean it for me?" she whispered. "What if it's for someone else? What if we're not supposed to see it?" He studied her face. Older now, sharper around the eyes but still holding that same spark of wonder she'd had as a child. She was scared not of the box itself, but of what it might awaken. They moved to the table and sat down. The clock ticked faintly, marking each unspoken thought. Jonas traced the grain of the wooden lid, then let his hand fall away. "I used to think," he said quietly, "that she left me nothing. No letter, no message, just silence." Lila swallowed. "You left before she got sick, Jonas. You weren't here." The words struck like a slap, but he didn't flinch. "I know." She looked down, guilt softening her tone. "I didn't mean." "You're right," he interrupted. "I wasn't here. And maybe that's why this box scares me." Silence again. Then Lila sighed and reached for the box. The moment her fingers touched it, Jonas felt a rush of memories. Laughter from another life. His mother's soft humming in the kitchen. Lila chasing him through the hallway, both of them believing the world was simple. He wanted to stop her, but curiosity burned hotter than fear. "Go ahead," he said, voice barely a whisper. The sound of the latch lifting was louder than it should have been, a small click that echoed through the house like a shot. Lila hesitated, then opened the lid. Inside were several folded letters tied with a faded blue ribbon, the edges yellowed and fragile. On top lay a small locket, heart-shaped, tarnished with time. Lila's hands trembled. "It's her handwriting again," she said, brushing a letter gently. Jonas leaned forward, staring. The first envelope read, "To my Lila, for when you're ready to understand." Lila blinked rapidly, eyes glistening. "She wrote to me." Jonas felt a pang, sharp, unexpected. "Looks like it." She picked up the first letter but didn't open it. "Maybe I should wait." "For what?" he asked. "For the right moment." Jonas clenched his jaw. "Lila, it is the right moment. She's gone. Or here. What are we waiting for?" She looked at him, then really looked, as though seeing him for the first time in years. "You sound angry." "Because I don't understand how you can just sit there," he said, his voice rising despite himself. "She wrote to you. She left you something. And you're afraid to face it." Lila flinched, then rose to her feet, clutching the box protectively. "Don't make this about you, Jonas. You didn't even say goodbye to her." The words hit deep, a knife he knew he deserved. "I know," he whispered. For a long moment neither spoke. The air grew heavy with everything left unsaid. Resentment, guilt, grief, love. Finally Lila sighed. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that." Jonas shook his head slowly. "No, you should've." He looked down at the letters, then back at her. "What do you think they say?" "I don't know," she murmured. "But maybe she was trying to tell me something about us." Jonas frowned. "Us?" "About why we stopped talking," she said softly. "About how we both lost her and each other at the same time." He stared at her, startled by the vulnerability in her voice. Lila tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "You remember how she used to say the attic kept secrets?" Jonas nodded. "Maybe this was one of them," she said. "Maybe she wanted me to find it when I was ready to forgive you." Jonas looked away, jaw tight. "Then I guess she misjudged the timing." But the faintest smile tugged at Lila's lips. "Maybe not." The air between them shifted, less sharp now, though still fragile. Jonas picked up the locket, turning it over in his palm. Inside was a faded photo. 2 children in front of the old oak tree. His arm around her shoulders. He felt something in his chest loosen just a little. "She kept this," he said quietly. "All these years." Lila nodded. "Mom never threw anything away. Especially not love." Jonas's throat tightened again. She placed the letters back into the box carefully, like fragile bones. "I think I'll read them tonight," she said softly. "Alone." He wanted to argue, to ask her to read them together, but something in her tone stopped him. Maybe she needed that space. Maybe he did too. Lila glanced at him before leaving. "You should come by tomorrow. We can talk then." Maybe we can go through the rest together. He nodded. Yeah, I'd like that. As she stepped out the door, Jonas looked down at the box, now missing one small piece of its mystery. He could almost hear his mother's voice again, faint, comforting, somewhere between memory and dream. Forgive her, Jonas. Forgive yourself. He whispered into the empty room. I'm trying, Mom. If you were in Lila's place, would you open the letter right away, or wait until you felt ready to face what it might reveal? Tell me what you'd do in the comments. The following morning, the storm had passed, leaving the world washed clean. The streets glistened, the air sharp with the scent of wet pine. Jonas drove slowly down the old country road toward the lake, the place their mother's note had pointed them to. Lila sat beside him, quiet but alert, hands folded in her lap. The silence between them wasn't hostile anymore. It was thoughtful, heavy with anticipation. The closer they got to the cabin, the more the memories began to surface. Childhood summer spent fishing on the dock, their mother's laughter echoing across the water, their father's deep voice humming old songs as the grill smoked in the background. Jonas glanced at Lila. Feels smaller than I remember. She smiled faintly. That's because we grew up. He gripped the steering wheel tighter. Yeah, we did. The cabin appeared through the trees. Small, weathered, but still standing. The porch steps creaked under their weight as they approached. Jonas pulled the key from his pocket, feeling its cold metal press into his palm. You ready? He asked. Lila nodded. I think so. He unlocked the door. The smell of cedar and dust rushed out, along with something else. Memory, maybe. Felt like stepping into a photograph. Everything was exactly where it had been left. The knitted throw over the couch, the bookshelf lined with half-read novels, the framed photo of their parents smiling in front of the same lake now visible through the window. Jonas set the box on the coffee table. If Mom left something here, it's probably hidden like before. Lila crouched down beside him. She always did love her riddles. They searched, checking drawers behind frames under loose floorboards. Then, behind the piano, Lila found a small wooden chest, identical in design to the attic box but painted blue. The note taped to its lid simply read, "For both." Lila's breath caught. She made one for us too. Jonas knelt beside her, heart hammering. You open it this time. She lifted the latch. Inside were 2 envelopes, tied together with twine. One labeled Jonas, the other Lila. Beneath them sat a small stack of Polaroids and a folded piece of paper covered in their mother's handwriting. Lila handed Jonas his letter. Their fingers brushed, a spark of shared fear and hope passing between them. On 3, she asked. He nodded. On 3. They counted softly together. Then they opened the letters. Jonas's eyes blurred as he read. My dear son, if you're reading this, it means you've found your way home. In more ways than one. I know how hard it was for you to leave, and harder still to come back. You've carried guilt that was never yours to bear. You think you failed me, but you didn't. You protected yourself the only way you knew how. You've always tried to be strong for others, Jonas. But strength isn't silence. It's the courage to stay even when it hurts. Let your sister see the heart you've been hiding. Still good. Still kind. Love always. Jonas folded the letter, pressing it to his chest. His breath came unevenly. She knew everything. Beside him, Lila sat frozen, her eyes wide as she read her own letter. My sweet girl. You've carried so much, anger, grief, loneliness, and turned it into armor. You thought I didn't see how hard it was for you when your brother left, but I did. You felt abandoned, but he was scared, not cruel. I hope one day you'll forgive him. You don't have to be the strong one all the time, my love. Let him back in. You both need each other more than you know. Always with you. Tears fell freely now. The cabin, silent for years, finally felt alive again. Not with noise but with release. Lila wiped her face and whispered. She knew how broken we were. Jonas nodded, voice trembling. And she tried to fix it even after she was gone. They sat together in silence, the letters between them. The lake shimmered through the window, sunlight flickering like hope. Jonas reached for the Polaroids. The first showed them as children, building a sandcastle by the shore. Another, their mother hugging them both from behind, her smile wide, her eyes soft. And the last one, all three of them sitting on the dock at sunset, the moment captured in perfect peace. He turned it over. On the back, their mother had written, "Forgiveness lives here." Lila let out a shaky laugh through her tears. She even planned the captions. Jonas smiled weakly. Classic mom. Then his expression softened. "Do you remember that day?" Lila nodded. "Yeah. You dropped your ice cream in the water, and she gave you hers instead." He chuckled. "And you were so mad you didn't talk to her for an hour." Her laughter mingled with his, fragile but genuine, a sound that felt like healing. But amid the warmth, a question still lingered. "Lila," Jonas said quietly, "what really happened between us after she died?" She hesitated, eyes drifting toward the window. "You really don't remember?" "I remember the fight," he said, "but not how it started." Her voice softened. "It wasn't about what was said, Jonas. It was about what wasn't. You shut down. You left before the funeral. I thought you didn't care." He exhaled slowly. "I cared too much. I couldn't handle seeing her gone. It felt like if I stayed I'd break." "I get that now," she said. "But back then, all I saw was you leaving me to handle everything alone." Jonas looked down at his hands. "I'm sorry." The simplicity of it, those two words, carried more truth than any explanation ever could. Lila reached across the space between them and took his hand. "I know. I'm sorry too." For a long time neither moved. The sound of the lake lapping against the shore filled the silence, soft and steady, like a heartbeat finding its rhythm again. Later, as the sun began to set, they stepped outside. The lake reflected orange and gold, just as it had in their childhood. Jonas felt the wind brush against his face, cool and forgiving. Lila slipped her arm through his. "You think she can see us?" He smiled faintly. "I think she never stopped." They stood there a while, two grown children holding the remnants of their mother's love, not as a burden but as a bridge. Behind them, the cabin door creaked softly in the breeze, the letters and photos resting together on the table, their past no longer haunting but whole. If you could receive one final letter from someone you've lost, what do you think it would say? Would it bring you peace or stir old pain? Share your thoughts below. They stayed at the cabin that night. Jonas lit a fire in the stone hearth, its warmth flickering across the walls like ghosts of old summers. Lila made cocoa in the same dented saucepan their mother used to use, humming softly under her breath, the same tune their mother always hummed when she wanted to fill silence with gentleness. For the first time in years, it didn't feel awkward being near each other. Just felt. Jonas sat cross-legged on the rug, poking the fire absently. "I'd forgotten how quiet it gets out here," he murmured. Lila smiled faintly. "You used to love it. You'd say it was the only place you could hear your thoughts." He chuckled. "Guess I stopped wanting to hear them." She handed him a mug. "Maybe it's time you start again." He took it, their fingers brushing, a small human connection that said more than words. Outside, the lake shimmered under a full moon. They opened the cabin door and stepped onto the porch, letting the cold air bite their cheeks. The world smelled of pine, wet earth, and something sweet. Nostalgia, maybe. Lila leaned against the railing. "Do you ever think about what life would have been like if Mom hadn't gotten sick?" "All the time," Jonas said softly. "I used to imagine I'd come home one day, and she'd be here waiting. Like nothing had changed. She used to talk about you, you know," Lila said. "Even when she was sick. Said you were her wild one, that someday you'd come back and remind me how to live again." Jonas looked down, blinking hard. "She always saw more in me than I deserved." "No," Lila said, voice steady now. "She saw you. The part of you that never stopped caring." For a long moment they stood in silence, the sound of water gently lapping at the shore. Then Lila spoke again, her tone softer. You weren't the only one who ran, Jonas. I stayed, but I built walls so high no one could reach me. Not even her. Jonas turned to her. You were trying to survive. So were you, she said simply. And in that truth, something inside them both finally exhaled. Later they sat on the old couch, flipping through one of the albums they'd found in the attic box. The photos told a story neither of them had been brave enough to revisit. Birthdays, camping trips, snowball fights, quiet dinners where their mother's laughter was the background music of their lives. Jonas paused on one photo, a picture of him as a teenager, standing awkwardly beside their mother at his graduation. She had her arm around him, her smile bright, his expression half-hearted. I was such an idiot back then, he said quietly. Lila smirked. Back then. He rolled his eyes, but the teasing softened his voice. I thought being distant made me strong. I thought if I didn't care too much, losing people wouldn't hurt as bad. Did it work? She asked. He shook his head. Not even close. Lila leaned her head on his shoulder. You were just scared of feeling too much. He smiled faintly. You always were better at understanding me than I was. And you always were better at pretending you didn't need anyone, she countered. They both laughed softly, the sound catching somewhere between humor and ache. The fire crackled, the cabin filling with a golden glow. Jonas reached into the box again, pulling out a small object they hadn't noticed before. A silver locket. It was tarnished but still beautiful. Inside was a tiny picture of their mother on one side and the two of them on the other. Children grinning with ice cream-smeared faces. Lila gasped. She wore that every day. Jonas nodded, running his thumb over the metal. She must have put it here before she got too weak to wear it. He placed it gently in Lila's palm. You should have it. Her eyes glistened. No. It belongs to both of us. She unclasped the chain and slipped it around both their wrists, holding it between them. The gesture was simple, wordless, but it meant we're in this together now. They sat like that for a while, the weight of the locket between them, the years of silence slowly unraveling. Outside, rain began to fall again, softer this time like the world exhaling. Lila broke the quiet first. Remember when Mom used to make us write reflections in that old cabin journal? Jonas laughed. Yeah. One thing you're grateful for today, she'd say. I hated it. She said it made you pay attention, Lila added, smiling. Even when things were bad. Jonas leaned back, eyes closing. You think we should do it again? She raised an eyebrow. You. Volunteering to write feelings down. Hey, people change. She grabbed a pen from the counter and tore a page from her notebook. All right then. One thing you're grateful for today. Jonas hesitated, then looked at her. You. Lila blinked, surprised. That's it. That's enough, he said simply. She smiled, then wrote her own answer beneath his. Coming home. The words sat side by side on the page. Small, humble, honest. As the fire burned low, they talked about everything and nothing. About their mother's laugh, their father's bad jokes. The way life had stretched them apart but somehow led them back here. Jonas leaned back on the couch, the warmth of the fire brushing his skin. You think Mom planned all this? Lila chuckled softly. She always did, like a dramatic reveal. He grinned. Yeah. And she knew us too well. Knew we'd never talk unless she left us a puzzle. Guess she was right, Lila said. They sat in companionable silence, listening to the gentle rhythm of the rain. And then Lila spoke again, her voice quiet but sure. I missed you, Jonas. He swallowed hard. I missed you too. The words hung in the air, simple and sacred. For the first time in years, Jonas felt peace. Not the kind that comes from forgetting, but the kind that comes from finally remembering. The fire cracked one last time, sending sparks up the chimney. The cabin seemed to sigh, as if it too had been waiting for this moment, for laughter to return, for love to fill its corners again. Jonas looked at Lila, her face lit by the flicker of the flames. You know, he said softly, Mom was right about one thing. What's that? He smiled. Forgiveness does live here. And as the rain fell gently outside, they believed it. Do you think forgiveness is something we give others, or something we give ourselves first? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Morning arrived quietly. Too quietly. The rain had stopped, but the world outside the cabin felt heavy, the air thick with a kind of stillness that promised something was about to change. Jonas woke to the soft sound of footsteps. Lila was already dressed, pacing near the window. Sunlight filtered through the curtains, landing on her face, a mixture of calm and worry. "You didn't sleep?" he asked. She shook her head. "Barely." Jonas rubbed his eyes. "Something wrong?" Lila hesitated, then held up her phone. "I called the lawyer this morning. About Mom's estate." He blinked, caught off guard. "The estate? Why now?" "Because there's something she left that we never sorted," Lila said. "The cabin. It's still in her name. The taxes are overdue. If we don't decide soon, it'll go to auction." Jonas sat up, the peace from last night evaporating. "Auction? You mean they could take it?" She nodded. "Unless one of us takes ownership. Or we sell it." He stood abruptly. "Sell it? Lila, this place is her. It's everything we have left." "I know," she said softly. "But it's also falling apart, Jonas. The roof leaks. The plumbing's shot. It's not just sentimental, it's a burden." He stared at her, disbelief creeping into his voice. "A burden? That's what you call it?" "Don't twist my words," she snapped. "I'm being realistic. You don't live here. You don't pay the bills. You swoop in after years and suddenly act like you care more than I do." Her words hit like a slap. Jonas's jaw tightened. "That's not fair." "Isn't it?" she shot back. "You left me to handle everything when she died. The hospital bills, the funeral, the house. All of it. And now you want to decide what stays and what goes." He took a step toward her, anger rising from someplace old and raw. "You think leaving was easy for me? You think I didn't hate myself for it every single day? Then why didn't you come back?" she demanded. "Because I didn't think you'd want me to." The words burst out of him, loud and jagged. The cabin seemed to shrink around them, the air crackling with years of unspoken blame. Lila's voice trembled. "You think I didn't want my brother? I wanted you there when Mom couldn't breathe. When she kept asking where you were. When I was holding her hand and pretending she wasn't dying. I wanted you." Jonas swallowed hard, his eyes glassy. "I couldn't watch her fade, Lila. Every time I called I froze. I couldn't bear to hear it." Her voice cracked. "You think I could?" He turned away, chest heaving. The silence that followed was unbearable, thick, suffocating. After a long moment, Lila exhaled shakily. "I'm sorry," she whispered, rubbing her temples. "This isn't what I wanted. I can't lose this place, Jonas. Not again. But I also can't hold it alone." Jonas turned back to her, his voice rough. "Then we fix it together. Like we should have done years ago." Lila's eyes flickered with hesitation. "You really mean that?" He nodded. "Yeah. I'm done running." For a moment hope returned, fragile but real. Then Lila's phone buzzed again. She glanced at the screen, and the faint color drained from her face. "What is it?" Jonas asked. "It's the lawyer again," she said slowly. "He said there's a clause in Mom's will. Something about a final instruction in the cabin's safe." Jonas frowned. "Safe? There's a safe." She nodded toward the far wall, behind the old bookshelf. "Dad installed one before he died. I forgot it even existed." They moved the shelf aside, revealing a small steel safe embedded in the wood. Lila crouched down, typing in the combination their mother used for everything. Her wedding date. Clicked open. Inside were a few documents, a faded photograph, and another envelope. Jonas picked it up slowly. The front read, "To be opened together." They sat at the table, the same spot where they'd read the other letters. The air between them buzzed with nervous energy. Lila unfolded the envelope. Inside was a handwritten note, shorter than the others but heavier somehow. My loves, if you're reading this, you've come farther than I ever dreamed. The cabin has always been more than wood and nails. It's our history. But history can't hold you forever. You have to decide what home means now. Don't keep this place because of me. Keep it because it still holds love. Or let it go and carry me with you instead. Jonas's eyes stung. She's giving us a choice. Lila's hands trembled as she set the letter down. And I don't know how to make it. Jonas leaned back, staring into the fire. The flames flickered like memories. Consuming, beautiful, impossible to hold. This cabin's where we learned everything, he said quietly. How to laugh. How to hurt. How to forgive. She nodded, her voice small. But if we keep it, we're tied to the past. And if we sell it, he said, trailing off, we lose her all over again. The clock ticked softly. The weight of choice hung heavy between them. Then suddenly Lila stood. I need air, she said, her voice unsteady. Before he could respond, she grabbed her coat and stepped out into the chill. Jonas followed a few minutes later, finding her standing at the dock, staring out at the lake. The wind had picked up, rippling the surface in silver waves. She used to stand right there, Lila said softly. Every morning, even when she was sick. Jonas came up beside her. She said the lake made her feel alive. Lila turned to him, tears on her cheeks. Jonas, what if we're not enough without her? What if everything she built just falls apart? He shook his head. It already did. But maybe that's okay. Maybe things have to break before they can become something new. She looked at him, really looked, and saw that he meant it. But pain still flickered behind her eyes. And then, in a single fragile moment, everything broke again. I can't stay here, she whispered. It hurts too much. Jonas's voice caught. Lila. I'm sorry, she said, stepping back. I thought I was ready. I'm not. She turned, walking toward the car. The sound of her footsteps faded down the dirt path, leaving Jonas alone on the dock. He stared at the water, the reflection of the sky trembling where hers had just been. For the first time since coming home, he felt truly, utterly alone. Have you ever been so close to healing something, only to watch it slip away again? Do you believe some connections can survive even after they shatter? Share your thoughts in the comments. The lake was still the next morning, its surface smooth as glass, reflecting a pale gray sky. Jonas hadn't slept. He'd spent the night on the couch, staring at the cold ashes in the fireplace, listening to the old cabin settle in the dark. Every creak sounded like a voice he almost recognized. His mother, maybe, whispering through the wood. By dawn, Lila was gone. Her absence filled the space louder than any argument ever could. He made coffee, but it tasted like nothing. The silence pressed down on him. Thick, familiar, suffocating. It was the same silence that had followed him for years, after he left home, after their mother's funeral, after every choice he made to avoid the people he loved most. He stood at the window, staring out at the dock where she'd left him. A single chair still sat there, damp from last night's dew. It reminded him of childhood mornings, when their mother would sit there and hum softly before waking them. He whispered into the emptiness. What do I do now, Mom? The question hung there, unanswered. Meanwhile in town, Lila sat in her car outside the old bakery. The world around her moved normally. People carrying coffee, kids running to the bus stop, a dog barking at nothing. Life uncaring, unpausing. She gripped the steering wheel, her hands trembling. The ache in her chest felt unbearable, not just from the fight, but from the weight of everything she tried to hold together. She pulled out her phone and opened her notes app. The last entry was from a week after their mother's funeral. It read, "He didn't come. I don't think I'll ever forgive him." Lila stared at the words, her throat tight. For years she had clung to that anger. It had been easier than admitting she missed him. It had been her armor. And now, with that anger gone, all that was left was grief. She typed beneath the old note, "He came back. And maybe that's enough." She saved it, then let the phone fall into her lap. Back at the cabin, Jonas sat at the kitchen table, the box still open before him. The letters, the locket, the Polaroids. All of it reminders of how much love had once lived in this family. He picked up the last photo again, the three of them on the dock, the caption on the back written in his mother's looping hand. "Forgiveness lives here." He traced the words with his thumb, whispering, "You were right, Mom. But I don't know how." He pulled a scrap of paper from his notebook and began to write. Slowly, haltingly, but honestly. "Layla, I know I said I'd stay, and I meant it. But I understand if you can't. I used to think leaving was the easiest thing to do. It's not. Staying hurts more, but it's real. And I want real. For once. If you decide to sell the cabin, I'll understand. But before you do, come back. One last time. I want to say goodbye to her, and to us, the right way. Your brother, Jonas." He folded the note, placed it inside the locket, and hung it on the doorknob. A message waiting for her if she returned. Then he walked to the dock. The morning mist was lifting, the lake silver under the early light. Jonas sat at the edge, dangling his feet above the water. The air smelled like wet earth and pine needles. He breathed deeply, the ache in his chest softer now. He spoke softly into the wind. "You did it, Mom. You got us this far." He smiled sadly. "Guess it's my turn now." For the first time he let himself cry, really cry. Not the tight, silent tears of guilt, but the raw, breaking kind that cleansed instead of destroyed. He cried for the years lost, for the words unsaid, for the little boy who thought leaving made him strong. And when the tears finally stopped, something inside him felt lighter. In town, Lila sat on a park bench across from the courthouse, watching people go about their day. The letter from the lawyer rested in her lap, the one about the cabin. She could sign it today and let everything go. But as she stared at the dotted line, something inside her hesitated. A voice, her mother's, seemed to echo in her memory. "Don't let silence win." She stood abruptly, the decision forming before she even realized it. She got into her car and turned toward the lake. When she arrived, the sun was already high, light glinting off the water. She stepped out, heart racing, scanning the dock. Jonas was still there, sitting with his back to her. He didn't turn right away, but he must have sensed her. When he did, his expression was a mix of surprise and relief. "You came back," he said softly. "I read your note," she replied. He nodded, smiling faintly. "Didn't know if you would." "I almost didn't," she admitted. "But then I realized. Mom didn't bring us here to choose between keeping the cabin or selling it. She brought us here to learn how to let go without losing each other." Jonas looked out at the lake, nodding slowly. Maybe that's what she meant by carrying her with us. Lila joined him on the dock, sitting close enough that their shoulders touched. The silence between them felt different now. Warm, open, forgiving. They watched the water for a while, the ripples catching sunlight like tiny flames. "I was thinking," Jonas said, breaking the quiet. "Maybe we could fix it up together. The cabin, I mean. Not to live in, but to keep it alive. Make it a place where people can come to breathe again." Lila tilted her head. "Like a retreat." "Yeah. For people who've lost something." Lila smiled, small but real. "Mom would love that. She'd probably try to run it from the afterlife." Jonas joked, and they both laughed, the sound bright against the still water. As afternoon turned to gold, Jonas pulled something from his pocket. The last Polaroid. "We should take another," he said. Lila frowned. "We don't have a camera." He held up his phone. "Modern times." They leaned close, the lake and cabin behind them. The screen flashed. When Jonas looked at the photo, he saw their mother's same smile echoed in theirs. Weary, imperfect, but alive. He turned the phone so Lila could see. "Guess forgiveness really does live here," he said quietly. She nodded, her hand finding his. And maybe it always will. If you were in Lila or Jonas's place, would you stay and rebuild or let go and start new? What does home mean to you? I'd love to hear your answer in the comments. A month later, the cabin breathed again. The windows that once fogged from silence now filled with light. The dust that had clung to every corner was gone, replaced by the scent of cedar and the faint hum of laughter. Jonas stood on the front porch, hammer in hand, repairing the last loose plank. Lila was inside, painting the living room a soft eggshell color, their mother's favorite. The project had taken them weeks of sweat, bickering and shared meals. But every nail driven, every board sanded, every broken thing restored was its own kind of prayer. For her, for them, for all the years they had lost. "Hey," Lila called from inside. "You're getting sawdust on the floor I just cleaned." Jonas grinned. "You missed a spot anyway." "Jonas." He laughed, the sound bright and boyish. For once, it didn't feel like a stranger's laugh. When evening fell, they lit a fire in the same hearth that had seen both their arguments and their reconciliations. The box, the one marked for her, sat between them on the table. It was nearly empty now, its secrets finally told. Lila looked at it thoughtfully. "You ever think about what she wanted us to do with it?" Jonas nodded slowly. "I think we already did it." He turned the lid over in his hands. Inside, written in faded pen, was a small note they hadn't noticed before, smudged but still legible. "If you've found peace, the box is yours now. Fill it with something new." Lila smiled softly. "Something new, huh?" Jonas looked around. The freshly painted walls, the mended floor, the faint laughter between them. "I think we've already started." The next morning they drove into town for supplies. Lila stopped by the print shop while Jonas picked up tools from the hardware store. When they met outside, she handed him a small brown envelope. "What's this?" he asked. "Just something for the box," she said. Inside were prints of the photo they'd taken on the dock, the one from that golden afternoon. Jonas stared at it, emotion swelling in his chest. "She'd be proud of us." "She already is," Lila said quietly. "I can feel it." They placed one copy of the photo in the box that night, sealing it gently, like placing a heartbeat back where it belonged. By early summer, the cabin looked alive again. Wildflowers grew around the porch. The dock had been replaced with sturdy new wood. A hand-painted sign hung near the entrance. "Her place, a haven for healing." It started with friends who'd lost someone, then neighbors who needed quiet, then strangers who heard about it through word of mouth. People came to the cabin to rest, to write letters, to remember. And in every corner, in every creak of the floorboards, there was love. Lila and Jonas didn't charge anyone to stay. They simply asked that each guest leave one small thing in the box, something that represented love, forgiveness, or memory. Within months it was full again. Letters, photographs, ribbons, tokens. Every story became part of theirs. One evening, Jonas stood by the window, watching the sunset bleed gold over the lake. Lila joined him, handing him a cup of tea.
Thank you for staying with us until the very end of this video, and I'm confident you enjoyed it. We've got plenty more exciting and heartwarming stories waiting for you. Just click on the image on your screen to watch the next one.